In this week's art style study, we'll be doing Bungo Stray Dogs, focusing more on the manga, although the differences between the manga and the show are minimal, so it'll apply to both styles. If you like art style studies, make sure to subscribe for more, and so you can vote on the next one. Before doing any art style study, we want to determine our main goals. What about the artist style do we like the most and want to replicate in our own art style? Maybe the line art, the rendering, anatomy, eyes, hands, or something else. Keep your list in mind so you know what to focus in on the most. Alright, first, anatomy. The general anatomy follows typical anime styling. The characters are generally slim, with their shoulders being around a head in width. The bottom half of the body is a bit longer than the top half, generally by an extra head or so. Moving on to the face, their faces are a bit elongated, so the space taken up by the nose is a bit long. They do use nubs for noses sometimes, but they also use the type of noses that are basically a straight line often as well, including simple shadowing to add definition. Moving on to the eyes, they vary in shape and size, but I think the most important part is that they're usually very sharp, with sharp angles to give them interesting shapes, not always following typical anime eye shapes. The actual pupils are simple, just an outline and a dot. Usually circular, but sometimes it can be a more unique shape like a diamond. The eyebrows are usually pretty thin, with some extra lines added in the eyelids to add some definition. The hair in general is pretty standard. Some important points are the ends are sharp and will extend past the end at times, creating a thin line that can make the hair seem a bit longer and a bit more detailed in my opinion, without actually adding details. Another detail is that while the curves of the strands are usually smooth, sometimes they have an interesting bump going on in particular strands. I honestly don't really know how to explain it, but I think the image on screen should make it clear. Lastly, for the hair, most of the details come from the outline instead of the inside, but not always. When there are lots of strands included inside the hair as well, you can usually divide it by finding the outline of the main hair and then the smaller details added inside. In the manga, characters with black hair usually don't have much details on the inside, just from it being all blacked out, but they will include some details through the use of white line art. Moving on to line art. From what I can tell online and by looking at the art, I'm pretty sure the manga is all done digitally, probably with something along the lines of the G Pen in Clip Studio, although most programs have their own version of this brush with usually the same name. The line art leans much more on the clean side, not 100%, but for the most part, it's pretty clean. They'll vary in thickness, and you can do this a multitude of ways, but most of the time, I believe artists will just have the thickness vary naturally by pen pressure. It's also generally thin, with the lines not usually getting too thick. I notice that sometimes the character's outline will be a bit thicker and the outline of the face, but not always. Lines also don't always connect, sometimes they leave gaps between them, especially for the smaller details like the hair strands or clothing details. While the line art is black, sometimes there will be white lines over any portions colored in black to bring back some details that get lost. Lastly, areas that should be darker, usually where line art overlaps with each other, will be a bit thicker to make it appear darker and add depth. Okay, lastly, rendering. They probably just use the G Pen brush, lasso, and the fill tool for everything. Dark parts like the clothing or hair will be colored in pure black with thin white lines inside to add any necessary details that disappeared. And also, they'll use some thicker white areas to give the illusion of adding lighting. Sometimes screen tones can be used for more in-between colors, as well as what I think is just a light gray for some shadows. It varies by panel, but the black fills are pretty consistent. For the screen tones in Clip Studio, you can use the lasso tool to decide where you want it to go and then click the screen tone button on the bottom right. You'll want to mess with the settings to find something you like. I use the undo button a lot here just until I can find something that I really like. The last tip for rendering is the very simple hatching they use. A block of shadow will often be marked out with an outline and lines are drawn in to fill the space. Unlike Gachi Okuta, where they draw their hatching to kind of follow the 3D form of the object that they're on, in Bungo Stray Dogs, they don't always do this. Oftentimes, when you're at hatching for something like the nose, hair, or the neck, they usually just do straight lines. They don't really follow any sort of shape. But anyways, you'll often see this type of shadow under the neck, on the face where the nose is, and the hair. For the nose, it doesn't always include the lines inside the shadow. Sometimes it's just the outline of the shadow. But adding lines will make the shadow on the nose appear much more stronger. Lastly, from what I can tell, I don't think any special filters are added at the end. Alright, next week's art style will be for the fellow YouTuber Ruri18. So if that sounds interesting or you like any of the other art style studies, then make sure to subscribe. Comment below who you'd like to see next, and I'll probably get around to adding them into my poll in the future. The new poll for the next video is out now, so feel free to go and vote in my post tab or click the link in the description to go directly there. If you found this helpful, make sure to drop a like, and okay, onto the master studies.